a war-torn galaxy, a quiet human soldier is given the chance to claim anything he wants. But instead of power or riches, he chooses a creature the world calls a monster. What follows isn't just a story of survival, it's a powerful journey of trust, transformation, and defying everything we think we know about beauty, fear, and belonging. Stay with us, because what she becomes will change everything. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Let's move toward wonderful story. In the distant stars where silence stretched between planets and galaxies hummed with the echoes of war, a tired soldier named Darren Holt trudged through the ruins of yet another broken world. He wasn't a hero, not the kind sung about in grand stories. He was just a man in worn armor with dirt under his nails and more scars than he could count. His duty had dragged him through endless battles against enemies too strange to describe and too powerful to reason with. He had stopped hoping for peace a long time ago. For Darren, war had become as natural as breathing. His squad had landed on the scorched surface of a planet called Rizek Prime. It was once home to an ancient alien race known as the Crisari, but now it was nothing more than ash and wreckage. The humans had pushed deep into enemy territory expecting resistance. Instead, they found silence, as if the planet itself had given up. That day, something unexpected happened. Hidden beneath the ruins of a crystal-shaped fortress, Darren's unit discovered a chamber untouched by bombs or blasters. Inside, dim blue light flickered across the walls, and the air felt heavy, as if it remembered every cry ever screamed in its space. There, chained in the center of the room, stood a creature unlike any Darren had ever seen. She was tall and thin, her skin glowing with deep violet and blue streaks that pulsed softly, like a heartbeat under her surface. Her face was angular, her eyes far too large, completely black with silver rings at their edges. She had clawed fingers and ridged bones beneath her skin, and her voice when she spoke was no louder than a whisper, yet it echoed like a song from another world. Her name was Niara. The soldiers stared at her in silence. Some recoiled. Others reached for their weapons. She looked monstrous by human standards, terrifying even. A being shaped by a different kind of beauty, one humans couldn't understand. Darren didn't move. He looked at her, and she looked back. There was fear in her eyes, but also dignity. She didn't plead. She didn't cry. She just stood there, silent and proud. The commander barked orders, announcing their victory. The war front had shifted. This fortress had held secrets, technology, and power. The humans now claimed it. As part of the reward, soldiers were allowed to take something from the captured stronghold: rare weapons, alien gold, strange machines. One by one, Darren watched the others claim their prizes. When it came to him, the room fell quiet. Everyone waited to see what he would choose. He didn't walk toward the weapon rack or the vault. He walked to her. "I'll take her," he said calmly, without hesitation. The room erupted in disbelief. Laughter, whispers, and sharp comments filled the air. The commander's eyebrows lifted in surprise. "You want that thing?" he asked, confused. "She's not a thing," Darren replied. "She's alive." That was all he said. He didn't try to explain further. He didn't care to. To him, everything else was just noise, glitter, and dust. Niara, though terrifying to look at, was a living being, and she deserved more than a death sentence just for being captured. Niara didn't speak as she was unchained. She didn't resist either. As the guards attached a containment collar around her neck, her silver eyes flickered toward Darren, but she said nothing. Her silence wasn't cold, it was distant like the stillness of space. Darren simply nodded at her and walked beside her as they made their way back to the transport ship. On the journey home, no one sat near Darren. His decision had marked him as different, strange even among the broken warriors who had seen everything. Some muttered insults under their breath. Others stared like he was carrying a bomb that could go off at any second. Niara was kept in a holding cell aboard the ship, with Darren posted nearby. He visited her during his rest breaks, often bringing food or water. She never touched them while he was there. She sat still, unmoving, eyes closed. Darren talked sometimes. Not much, just a few words. He didn't know why he kept doing it. Maybe he just wanted to remind her she wasn't alone. Late one night, when the ship was silent and the stars passed quietly outside the windows, Darren sat with his back to her cell wall. "Do you understand me?" he asked softly, not expecting a response. A pause followed, then a voice, low, quiet but steady. "Yes," she said. It startled him, not because she spoke, but because of how much sadness was hidden in just that one word. She didn't speak again that night, neither did Darren. But something changed in that silence, like a door had creaked, open between two very different lives. Darren didn't know what would happen next. He didn't know what kind of future waited for him, for Niara, or for the fragile truce they now carried with them. All he knew was that when he looked at her, he didn't see a monster. He saw someone left behind in the dark, just like him. The ship moved quietly through the stars, its engines humming like a distant storm behind thick metal walls. Inside, the air was cold and still, and the crew kept their voices low. No one wanted to draw attention, not to themselves, and certainly not to the strange creature locked away in the back of the ship. They avoided her cell as if it radiated danger, but one man returned to it again and again, not out of duty but choice. Darren Holt. Darren sat outside the locked door during breaks, sometimes with a meal tray, sometimes with just a tired mind that needed somewhere to rest. Niara, the alien he had chosen to protect, remained silent most of the time. She barely moved. Her black, silver-ringed eyes often stared at nothing, her clawed hands folded neatly in her lap. Her glowing skin, once shifting with soft blue and violet pulses, now dimmed as if even her body had grown quiet. At first, Darren tried to speak to her. Simple questions. "Are you in pain? Do you need food? Can I bring anything?" But she never answered. He didn't press her, he simply kept showing up. He placed her meals gently inside the chamber, then sat nearby, sometimes for hours, sometimes for just minutes. The other soldiers whispered behind his back. Some thought he was a fool, others believed he had lost his mind. But Darren didn't care. He wasn't doing it for them. It was Tessa Lorne, a junior medical officer, who noticed something strange first. She had been assigned to monitor Niara's vitals once a day and collect blood samples through non-invasive scans. At first, the readings made no sense. Her body temperature shifted based on her emotions. Her cells reacted differently when Darren was near, almost as if recognizing him. It was subtle, but it was there, a kind of bond growing between them, even if no words were shared. Tessa approached Darren one afternoon while he was sitting alone in the mess hall. She slid into the seat across from him without asking. "She's changing," she said quietly. "Her body, it's reacting to you." Darren looked up, surprised. "What do you mean?" "I don't think it's dangerous," she added quickly, "but it's rare. Her kind, what little we know of them, have something like a second form. It's not just biology, it's emotional. They adapt based on how they're treated. If she trusts you, something might happen." Darren didn't say much in return, only nodded. He wasn't sure what to do with that information, or if it even mattered. But it stayed in his mind, like a small spark waiting to catch fire. Later, that evening, during another long, quiet watch outside Niara's chamber, the power flickered. For a few seconds, the lights dimmed, and the ship trembled slightly from a course adjustment. Darren stood quickly, ready for anything. When the lights returned, he noticed Niara had moved. She was standing now, closer to the edge of the barrier, between them. "You don't have to keep doing this," she said, her voice a gentle rasp that carried across the small space. Darren blinked in surprise. "Doing what?" "Coming here, sitting, watching, waiting." "I'm not waiting for anything," he replied. She tilted her head, her eyes glowing faintly once more. "Then why?" Darren rubbed the back of his neck. "Because I don't believe you deserve to be treated like a problem. You haven't done anything wrong. Niara looked at him for a long time and something shifted in her posture. She wasn't stiff anymore. Her shoulders relaxed slightly, her eyes softened. "My people believe in something called the shaping," she said slowly. "A change of self. It happens only when we are seen, truly seen." Darren sat down again, quietly. "Are you saying that's what's happening to you?" "I don't know," she answered, "but I feel different when you're near." They sat in silence, for a while both unsure of what to say next. Darren thought about what it meant to be seen, not just looked at but understood. Maybe that was what had drawn him to Niara in the first place. The same loneliness, the same tired eyes, the same hope buried deep beneath all the scars. Days passed, and their quiet conversations became more frequent. Niara asked him about Earth, about the oceans, the trees, the way rain felt on human skin. Darren told her stories from his childhood, simple things like learning to fish with his father or watching the sky from a rooftop. In return, she spoke of her world before the war, giant crystal cities that sang with energy, gardens grown from starlight, dances performed beneath twin moons. Her world sounded like a dream, distant and beautiful. But there was still a barrier between them, not just of glass and metal, but of fear. Darren could sense it. He knew Niara didn't fully trust anyone, not yet. He didn't blame her. After all, she had been chained, stared at, and nearly killed. Trust took time. One night, as the stars passed slowly outside the window, Niara said something that stayed with Darren long after she fell silent again. "You didn't choose me to save me," she said. "You chose me because something inside you is broken too." He didn't argue. Maybe she was right. But that didn't change what he felt. "No one deserves to be broken alone," he said. And for the first time, Niara smiled. It was small, barely there, but it was real. The transport ship broke through Earth's atmosphere like a falling star, leaving behind a trail of light that faded into the morning sky. Inside, Darren Holt stood near the exit ramp, his hands clenched at his sides. Beside him stood Niara, tall and silent, her glowing skin covered in a loose cloak meant to hide her alien features. But nothing could truly hide her. Not her unusual height, not the soft shimmer of light that pulsed beneath her skin, and certainly not the way people looked at her, even before they saw her face. As the ship landed at the military base, a crowd had already gathered. Reporters with cameras, officials in crisp uniforms, and curious civilians lined the gates. The return of the soldiers should have been a moment of celebration. Instead, a heavy silence fell when Niara stepped into view. The whispers started, almost immediately. Then came the gasps. Parents pulled their children closer, faces twisted in confusion, then fear, then disgust. Darren felt it like a weight pressing down on his chest. They walked together across the landing pad, Niara keeping her eyes low, her hands tucked into her sleeves. Darren stayed close, his body tense. When a reporter stepped forward, shoving a microphone toward him, Darren stopped short. "Why did you bring that creature here?" the reporter asked. "What makes you think it belongs on Earth?" Before Darren could respond, a familiar voice rang out from the crowd. "Because he's too soft for his own good," said Major Rennick, a fellow soldier who had always seen the war in black and white. "He thinks kindness is bravery. It's weakness." Darren turned, jaw clenched, but he didn't reply. He didn't need to. Niara stood behind him, still quiet, still enduring the stares and the fear as if she'd expected nothing else. And maybe she had. They were led inside the facility, away from the crowd and cameras. But the tension didn't fade. It followed them into every hallway, every room. Eyes watched from behind corners and whispered voices followed them everywhere. Even some of the soldiers who had once called Darren friend now kept their distance. Inside the command center, Admiral Cassian sat behind a long table, fingers folded, his expression unreadable. He studied Niara as if she were a problem to be solved, not a living being. "Explain," the Admiral said simply. Darren stood tall. "She's not a prisoner. She's intelligent. She communicates. She helped us understand parts of the Crisari we never could before. I believe she deserves protection, not fear. Cassian leaned back. And what proof do you have that she isn't dangerous? Nyara stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. If I wanted to harm you, I would have done so already. But I seek understanding. Isn't that what your kind claims to value? Cassian didn't answer. Instead, he waved his hand toward the guards. Until we decide what to do next, she remains under observation. For everyone's safety. The door closed behind them with a heavy sound. Darren was allowed to remain near her, but the room they were given was small, cold, and constantly monitored. Days passed and the news spread fast. Photos of Nyara leaked online. People reacted with panic. Some called her a threat. Others demanded she be removed from Earth entirely. Only a few voices rose in support. Scientists, diplomats, and a few activists who believed peace was still possible. Outside the facility, protesters gathered every day, holding signs and shouting slogans. Some of them tried to break in. One group even threw rocks at the walls. The fear was growing, turning into something ugly. Darren felt helpless watching it unfold. Inside the quiet of their room, Nyara grew more distant. Her voice became softer, her glowing skin dimmed. One evening, as a storm rolled across the skies outside, she stood by the window staring at the rain. They don't see me, she whispered. They see their fears, their nightmares. Darren stood behind her, unsure of what to say. He reached out, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. You're not alone, he said. Not anymore. But even as he said it, he felt a strange tension in the air. A low hum filled the room, and when he looked at her, her skin was pulsing with brighter light. Her breathing grew uneven. What's happening? He asked. I don't know, she said, her voice shaking. Something inside me is changing. Before he could respond, a blinding flash filled the room. The walls trembled, alarms rang out, and then she was gone. All that remained was a faint glow in the air and silence. Panic spread through the base. Some believed she had escaped. Others claimed she had finally shown her true power. Darren knew neither was true. She hadn't attacked. She hadn't run. Something had changed inside her, something she had warned him about, and now she was somewhere out there, transformed, alone, and more vulnerable than ever. He sat on the floor of the empty room, his heart pounding, his thoughts racing. The world had turned its back on her, just when she needed someone to believe in her most. But he wasn't done. Not yet, because he still believed in her. And he would find her. Darren Holt hadn't slept in days. Ever since Nyara vanished in that burst of light, his world had been spinning with questions and worry. The military treated it like a threat. Alarms had blared. Scientists rushed in, scanning every surface, trying to understand what happened. But Darren had seen the look in Nyara's eyes just before she disappeared. It wasn't anger or hate. It was fear, and something more. A deep, stirring change. He remembered what she had said about the shaping, the transformation her people only experienced under deep emotional pressure. Whatever had happened in that room, she hadn't fled. She had evolved. While the others prepared for lockdown and security sweeps, Darren did something different. He searched for clues. Every bit of Crisari history that Nyara had shared with him echoed in his mind. Tales of ancient places, hidden temples, places where the stars touched the earth. One phrase kept coming back to him, where the sky hums and the earth remembers. It had sounded poetic at the time. Now it felt like a map. He left the facility under the pretense of a field mission, with the help of a quiet researcher named Iron Soul who believed in Nyara's innocence. Darren tracked strange energy patterns to a mountain range deep in the wilderness. There, among the rocks and trees, they found something that hadn't been touched in centuries, an ancient structure made of smooth black stone, humming faintly under their boots. Inside the temple, the air was thick and electric. Glowing markings ran along the walls, pulsing like veins. At the center of the chamber stood a cocoon-like shape, floating slightly above the ground wrapped in threads of light. Darren stepped closer, heart racing. Within the cocoon, he saw her, Nyara, but not the same. Her features had softened, her skin radiant with shifting colors, like starlight on water. Her hair flowed like silk, glowing faintly. Her eyes, once silver-ringed black, now held a golden hue, warm and steady. She wasn't the Nyara he had first met. She was something more, something whole. Slowly the cocoon unraveled. She stepped forward, her feet barely touching the ground, and met Darren's eyes. "You came," she said, her voice richer and calmer, like a song remembered from childhood. "I said I would," Darren replied, barely able to speak through the tightness in his chest. "I had to disappear," she said, looking down at her hands. "I was breaking apart. The fear, the rejection. It was too much." The shaping finished what the pain started. Darren nodded, understanding more than he could say. "You didn't run. You became." She stepped closer, her presence no longer hidden or fearful, but full of quiet power. "I am not just Chrysari anymore. I'm something new, something in between." Word of her return spread faster than anyone expected. Drones caught images of her near the temple, and the world reacted, with confusion and awe. Some were inspired, others terrified. A meeting was quickly arranged at the United Earth Council. Nyara agreed to speak, not because she owed anyone answers, but because she wanted to try one more time to be heard. She stood on the stage in front of thousands with Darren behind her. Cameras streamed her every movement. The room was tense. Politicians, scientists, soldiers, and civilians all waited to see what she would say. "I did not ask to be feared," she began. "I did not ask to be judged for how I look or where I was born. But I was. Again and again. And yet here I stand. Not as your enemy, not as your ruler, but as your guest. I have seen your fear. I have felt your hate. And still I hope." She spoke of her journey, her pain, and her transformation. She spoke of Darren, of the soldier who chose kindness over conquest. She asked not for power, not for control, but for a place in the world. Not just for herself, but for anyone who had ever been cast aside for being different. When she finished, the room remained silent for several seconds before applause slowly began. It wasn't thunderous, not yet, but it was real. In the days that followed, Nyara became a symbol of change. People debated, argued, protested, and celebrated. The Chrysari sent emissaries to retrieve her, claiming she was still one of them, their royal heir. But Nyara met them with calm eyes and a quiet voice. "I no longer belong to one people," she said. "I belong to the future we all have the power to shape." The emissaries left not in anger but with respect. They saw what she had become, and what they had lost by rejecting her. Darren stayed by her side through it all. The interviews, the threats, the long nights where doubts returned. One evening, as they stood on a hill overlooking the city below, filled with lights and life, Nyara turned to him. "Do you think they'll ever truly accept me?" she asked. Darren looked at her, his voice steady. They might not. But that's not the point. You've already changed the story." She smiled, and for the first time, it was free of sadness. She took his hand, her fingers warm, against his. Together they looked up at the stars. They had both come a long way, from war and loneliness to a moment that felt like hope. And beneath the sky that stretched forever, they took a step forward, not as human and alien, not as savior and survivor, but as two souls brave enough to believe the world could be better.